the Torah over here tells us that Yaakov Avinu did something that seems pretty irresponsible. He knows that the brothers have a lot of animosity towards Yosef. He knows it. He saw it, because it says, V'aviv shamaris hadavar. That, after the brothers are so jealous and they express their resentment to Yosef after he tells them his dreams, it says, V'aviv shamaris hadavar, that Yaakov is looking at this and he knows what's going on. He harbors this in his heart. He sees the animosity among the brothers towards Yosef. And yet, what does he do? The very next thing that he does, the Torah says, and we have it on your sheet, in Perek Lamed Zayin, Pasuk Yud Gimel, Yisrael turns to Yosef and he says to him, Halo achecha ro'im bishchem. Behold, Yosef, your brothers are shepherding in the town of Shechem. Lecha ve'eshlachacha alehem. Go and I will send you to them. Vayomer lo hineni. And Yosef says, here I am, I'm ready to go. Next pasuk, Vayomer lo lechna re'eya shalom achecha ve'et shalom hatzon. Go and find out the welfare of your brothers and the welfare of the sheep. Vahashiveni davar. And then you'll come back and you'll tell me. Vayishlachehu me'emek Chevron vayavo Shechema. And he sends him from the valley of Chevron, and then he comes to Shechem. Tetvav vayimtsaehu ish v'hinei to'eh basadeh. Yosef finds a man who Chazal tell us is an angel. And Yosef is sort of wandering aimlessly in the field because he can't find his brothers. Vayish alehu ha'ish lemor ma tivakesh. So the man, or the angel, says, excuse me, sir, what are you looking for? Tezayin. Vayomer es achai anochi mevakesh. Yosef says, I'm seeking my brethren. And by the way, you know that one of the reasons why Yaakov did this is because he wanted Yosef to say those fateful words. Et achai anochi mevakesh. I seek my brethren. Because that in itself is what every Jew has to say. I seek my brethren. Hagida nali eifohem ro'im. Please tell me, where are they shepherding? So, Yud Zayin, Vayomer ha'ish nasu umizeh. So the man tells him, oh, well, they've already left. Ki shamati omrim neilcha dotana. Because I've heard them say that let's go to Dotan. Vayelech Yosef acharecha vayimtzaim bedosan. So Yosef goes after his brothers and he finds them taka. They're no longer in Shechem. They've gone to Dosan. Vayiru oso meirachok. The brothers see him from a distance. Uveterem yikrav alehem vayisnaklu oso lahamiso. And before he can even come close to them, the brothers plot. They conspire to kill him. And you know the rest of the story. We don't need to read the rest of the psukim. But this is sort of like the gap portion of the story between the dreams of Yosef and where they throw him into the pit. This is the gap in the story where the series of events occur in order to bring Yosef to this very, very dangerous and perilous event. And the question really is on Yaakov. How could Yaakov do this? He knew that the brothers really didn't like Yosef. Why is he sending Yosef into the lion's den, proverbially? So, take a look at the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, source number 2, and he says as follows. He says, Perush lecha etzel achecha. So, really, what Yaakov was saying is, go to your brothers, v'im ata choshesh l'sin atam, and if you're worried about their hatred, hareini melavecha v'sholchecha bidvar mitzvah. Don't worry. I am sending you for a dvar mitzvah. I'm telling you, go ahead and do a mitzvah. And what do we know about people who are going to do a mitzvah? Why do you give a person shliach mitzvah geld? To protect them. To protect the person. Yes, because when you give a person, by the way, that's why you don't need to give a person shliach mitzvah geld if they're going to Eretz Yisrael. Because going to Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah. So if the whole purpose of shliach mitzvah geld is to protect the person, because shluchei mitzvah einam nizokim, that people who are going to do a mitzvah are protected from harm. So here, take this money, do a mitzvah with it, and so you'll be my shliach for a mitzvah, you'll be protected from harm. I'm going to Eretz Yisrael. So you're already protected. Anyone's going to Eretz Yisrael. When you leave Eretz Yisrael, that's when you need to take shliach mitzvah, right? That's the reason, okay? Now, you could give someone tzedakah money to give to the poor in Eretz Yisrael. That's a virtuous thing to do, but it's not really shliach mitzvah geld. It's just giving them tzedakah. Okay. But in any event, this was Yaakov's intention. I want you to go see your brothers, and by the way, you're a shliach mitzvah. You're doing a mitzvah because you're fulfilling the mitzvah of kibbud Avraham, and v'shluchei mitzvah inam nizokim. And as we know, that people who are sent or dispatched to do a mitzvah are free from injury, will be spared from any harm. The next pasuk, the Orach Chaim continues. He says, "Lecha lechna re'ei." So atahu mefaresh lichut hamitzvah she'oseh. Now the pasuk explains what the mitzvah that Yoseph is being sent to do. He says, "Va'amar v'hashiveni davar," and also I want you to come back and give me a response. He says, "Aso shliach lahachzir lo tshuva shebazeh afilu laman da'amar shluchei mitzvah einam nizokim da'afka b'halichatan avalo b'chazaratan." He says, we paskin, I think it's Rabbi Eliezer who says it, that when you're sent to do a mitzvah, you're guaranteed from harm both on the way to do the mitzvah and also on the way back. But that's only according to one opinion. So Yaakov was saying to him, just in case you're not protected on the way back, so I want you on the way back, you'll be doing a mitzvah also. Number one, you'll be fulfilling my mitzvah of kibbud Avraham by seeking the welfare of your brothers. And then you need to report back to me. So that's also a mitzvah, to report back to me. And that way you're protected both on the way there and on the way back. And that way, Yaakov is sort of now protected. He's got the insurance policy of coming back. He'll be able to come back safely to his father. Now, the Orach Chaim asks a very legitimate question. Now this is a much longer commentary of the Orach Chaim. We've whittled it down to get to the essence. I want you, if you want to see the original, there's a lot more discussion here. But the basic question the Orach Chaim asks is, let me ask you a question. Do we all believe that shluchei mitzvah inam nizokim? No. You don't believe it? No, okay. But let's say you believe it, okay? Even if you do believe it, if you believe that shluchei mitzvah inam nizokim, does that mean that I can walk in front of a speeding bus in order to walk an old lady across the street? Right? Does that mean that if I have tzedakah money to go and give, I can just walk in the middle of traffic? So there have to be limits to shluchei mitzvah inam nizokim. So what are the limits? The Gemara actually has this discussion. Who wants to say, what are the limits? Can anyone identify the limits of this guarantee? The Gemara says it's where shchicha hezeka. So what does that mean? Shchicha hezeka means that if you know that danger is likely, then you can't flirt with danger just because you're a shliach mitzvah. So, getting on a plane is not considered to be flirting with danger. So, yes, there's a minuscule amount of plane crashes, right? So if you are taking tzedakah on the plane with you, so that's your additional insurance policy that you'll be free from injury. Yes?
After what happened 2 weeks ago in Har Nof, I'm really having a hard time with this shluchei mitzvah inam nizokim. You read us that thing, Rabbi Twirsky's wife, saying how he went to the mikveh that morning and they're standing there and they're davening in a shul. They're not taking any dangerous actions, they're in the midst of the mitzvah. I'm thinking there must be a lot of fine print on this shluchei mitzvah.
There is a lot of fine print. The simple answer, and by the way, it's a very, very valid question. There's a lot of fine print, you're right, but more than that, the Gemara only gives the guarantee if you're on your way to do a mitzvah, not if you're actually in the midst of doing a mitzvah. There's a difference between the two. But even more than that, you know the famous story about Acher? Yeah. About Rabbi Elisha ben Abuya? What caused him to become a heretic? He saw a father telling his son, climb up on the ladder, or climb up the tree, and fulfill the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKen, and send away the mother bird. The two mitzvahs in the Torah, the only two mitzvahs in the Torah, where the Torah says that if you do that, you'll have long life. And what happens? Kid climbs up a tree, slips, and he falls, and he dies. So Elisha ben Abuya says, les din v'les dayan, there's no justice, there's no judge, this is all just a free-for-all. And of course the Gemara says, well, how do we make peace with that? The Gemara says, because l'man yarichun yamecha, can sometimes be referring to not in this world, but in the next world as well. So, but what about the fact that shluchei mitzvah einam nizokim? That people who are sent to do a mitzvah are free from damage, are free from injury. This kid was certainly a shliach mitzvah. He's climbing up a tree to do a mitzvah. So there's fine print. So that's all you can say. There are qualifications to this mitzvah. When Chazal say that shluchei mitzvah einam nizokim does not mean an absolute guarantee in every single situation that a person who's on his way to do a mitzvah will be freed from injury. But there are certain because there are certain judgments that are absolute. That when it's time to die, it's time to die. There are other judgments that apparently, and again, this involves very advanced divine workings, but there are other judgments that are conditional judgments, that God says, if X, then you'll die, and if Y, then you won't die. So they're in those certain kinds of situations where the decree is not absolute. When a person is on his way to do a mitzvah, he has extra protection. That's the simple way to understand how you reconcile all of these situations. Okay, so I register the complaint, right? Above, yes? Okay, yes.
I agree with you for this explanation, but there is a question, what kind of death? I was shaken from this pasuk when these 3 boys who were killed on this bus stop, the driver who brought them there told them, maybe you shouldn't be here. And they said, don't worry, we said Tfilat Haderech. And this is what happened. But, okay, when it's time is die, it is time to die. But what kind of death?
Okay, there's much more to discuss. Yes.
If I may make 2 comments on
yes, please.
Things. With Shiluach HaKhan, perhaps, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say this, perhaps there's another way of looking at the whole Inyan of Shiluach HaKhan, and the father perhaps misinterpreted. Perhaps Hashem meant by Shiluach HaKhan, if you need those eggs, then you go and take them in such and such a way that is not, okay? And not just stam, you go and take them. And maybe Hashem was trying to teach Chazal a lesson by, look at this.
Could be, but that it goes really, Abaya says explicitly in the Gemara that even if you don't need the eggs, there's still a mitzvah. There's a debate in the Gemara, but okay, so maybe
I have trouble with that.
Okay.
My second comment, if I may, related to Rebbe Tzatorsky, and in her words, very emotional words at the time that I think hit all of us, when she said that if a tzaddik is standing and davening and somebody comes in to shoot, then if he's not meant to die, he won't die. Am I right that I understood it relatively correctly?
Well, I mean, I don't think she was speaking theologically, but she was saying that my husband died the way he lived. He died in a very holy place.
But my concern was that a 17-year-old boy reading that, hearing it, and she's saying it in the height of emotion, could think, okay, well, when we hear the Azakot, the sirens going, if I'm meant to die, I will die. So I don't have to go hide. I don't have to go run to a shelter. And it's very dangerous.
Okay, so you're right. It has to be qualified very carefully. I don't think that's, clearly that's not what she was advocating. But
no,
she
wasn't advocating.
And again, it goes back to what I said to Patricia before, is that we all make peace with the realities that are presented to us in life, using different perspectives of the realities that we're presented with. And for her, this was tremendously consoling.
I understood where she came from.
Yeah.
I understood. I just think it's
so we have to be careful. We have to be careful not to extrapolate.
I understood from her depths of emotion, and nobody can really, but just the nature.
Well said. Okay, let's go back to the simple stuff. So the Orach Chaim's question is very simple. If we know that there's a principle of shchicha hezeka shaini, that when peril is prevalent, you're not allowed to rely on the mitzvah that you're doing. So still the question is back, what right did Yaakov have to send Yosef into a place where peril was prevalent? He says, and this, again we're skipping many lines, but he answers, She'echav lo hayu vadai shchiach hezeka, ki lo ya'ale al dat Yaakov, shekol kach yisna'u begeder shelo yatzil miyadam shlichut mitzvah. That Yaakov didn't think that it was such a perilous thing. Yaakov didn't think that it was so perilous that, I don't suspect. I know that my other sons don't like Yosef, but I don't really think that it rises to the level of real imminent danger that they're going to take out a dagger and kill him. He was worried they might do something to him, so there's mild potential danger, or risk at least, and therefore shluchei mitzvah einam nizokim. But he didn't think that the danger rose to a level where he couldn't rely on that device. But then he asks another question. He says in the next paragraph, V'im tomar im kein lama haya masha haya le'eved nimkar Yosef. Well, then why didn't it work? I mean, if Yaakov anticipated and he sent Yosef to do a mitzvah because shluchei mitzvah einam nizokim, because when you're going to do a mitzvah, you're protected from harm. Well, then why did it end up backfiring? Like, what went wrong? So he says a very strange answer. He says, Yesh lomar shenezek shetachlito hatava umala gedola eno chashuv nezek. One answer he gives, he said, really it was for Yosef's benefit to get sold into slavery. I mean, ultimately, it wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't injury to Yosef. At the moment, it felt terrible. Like, it felt like the worst thing that could possibly happen to a human being in the world is to get sold into slavery against his will. But it really turned out to be a tremendous bracha, so that's why all's well that ends well. That's one answer. He says, Va'otam yesh badavar, v'hu ki Yaakov alav hashalom dikdek b'dvarav b'shlichut. But if you look carefully in what Yaakov really sent Yosef, look at carefully what he told him to do. Halo achecha ro'im b'shchem lecha ve'esh lachacha aleihem. He says, go to Shechem and see how your brothers are faring. Harei gila da'ato befeirush ki shlichuto hu l'Shechem. I only want you to go to Shechem to see how your brothers are doing. Ucheshalach Yosef v'lo mitzam b'Shechem ve'alach lechazer achareim b'makom acher harei hu shliach atzmo. He's not, when he goes and leaves Shechem to go to Dotan, he's not fulfilling his father's proxyship anymore. And therefore he's no longer a shliach mitzvah.
I don't like that.
Yeah, you don't like that answer. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Is it not possible that Yaakov just miscalculated the depths of the brothers' feelings?
Well, yes, but the Or HaChaim does not want to say that. The Or HaChaim looks at Yaakov as all wise and understanding and discerning. But you have a right to offer that as your answer.
He was a parent.
He was a parent.
Like you said,
Right.
you can't be an objective person when it comes to your own
He wasn't being totally objective, correct. Okay, that's one answer. Or HaChaim is not prepared to offer that. He wants to defend the wisdom of Yaakov. Yes?
Did he maybe have prophecy and he knew what was coming? Obviously, he had a better picture, like the...
So the Or HaChaim says that this was prophecy. In other words, he felt that with Ruach HaKodesh, he saw that Shechem is a place where I know that Yosef will be protected. So Yosef only go to Shechem. And when Yosef goes to Dotan, it's not the right place. And the protective powers are not going to be with you if you go to Dotan. So I was also very dissatisfied with this answer until I looked at something very careful in the wording of the psukim. Notice how it says, Vayishlachehu me'emek chevron vayavo shechema. In pasuk Yudalad, you have that word emek chevron. And, Chazal point out that Chevron is in a valley, and he had to go up a hill in order to get to Shechem. Somewhere probably in the Judean hills, right? So what is the import of that? Now, also take a look at Pasuk Yudchet. It says, Vayiru oto me'rachok. The brothers see him from afar. Now, what's the difference? See, when the original intent of Yaakov was that your brothers are on a highland, right? They're tending to the sheep on the highlands. So that's that way that in Scotland they have the sheep on the highlands, right? Right, because you're a Highlander because you have your sheep on the high, right? So they're not going to see you because when you come from down on the side of the hill, they're not going to see you until you pop up your head and you're right there, right next to them. But that's not what happened. He goes to Dotan, and in Dotan it's a flat land. And so they can see him from far away coming. And this is what enables them to conspire. Because if you look at the next pasuk, Vayomru ishel achiv hinei bal hachalomot halazeba. Look, here comes the dreamer. Now we have time to talk while Yosef is on his way coming to us. And that's the reason why it didn't work, why Yaakov's plan didn't work. Because if you go and you surprise them and all of a sudden you're in their face, they don't have time to conspire against you. So then there's a chance of you reconciling with them. You'll schmooze with them. You'll bring them something to eat or to drink from home. They'll make nice again. But if you're coming from a distance, they can see you from far away. It's not good. But I think there's a very important ethical lesson that we're meant to take from this story, and that is that there's a big difference when you see someone from a distance versus when you see someone up close. A lot of times when you see people at a distance, you make certain assumptions and conspiracies in your mind. Like, I don't know the person that well, but I don't really like the way that they looked at me when I saw them at shul. Or did you notice she walked right past me and didn't even make eye contact, pretended I wasn't even there? Does that ever happen? Or is it just me? Does that happen to you also? Just me. I'm the neurotic rabbi. What can I tell you? No one else has these neuroses except me. This is my therapy. Right? So, right, thank you. So, so does that ever happen that, you make assumptions about people because you just see them at a distance and you're not able to, and then all of a sudden it turns out like a week later that person will come over to you and they'll be your best friend. And you'll say, well, why in the world did that person ignore me? And then you sort of put the pieces together and you realize, oh, she wasn't ignoring me. She couldn't see. She didn't have her contacts on, or whatever. You fill in the blank. But there's always an explanation, right? And we create these elaborate plots in our mind about people when we look at them at a distance, and we have this opportunity to create all of these crazy stories about what that person did to me, or what that person didn't or should have done, and they would have done, and they could have done it, but they didn't, and that makes them the most horrible person in the world. And yes, sometimes in order to be able to really understand the person, you have to come up very close. And that's really what Yaakov's intention was. He wanted the brothers to meet each other for the first time face to face. He didn't want them to see each other at a distance, because when you see people at a distance, you start filling your mind with stories about the person and thinking the worst of them. So we have to be very, very careful about that. That's why the mitzvah of being done l'kav zuchut is such a difficult mitzvah. There's another whole lesson that I wanted to take out of Rav Nevinsal's essay, but we don't have time for it now. I'll just tell you it's worthwhile. It's a good read, but it's part of a much larger essay. But I'll just tell it to you in like al regel achat. I'll explain to you. His other lesson that we learn from this whole story, looking at the larger story of Yosef and his brothers, is that we see an uncanny a sort of paradox in the whole story. Yosef's own brothers hate him. They can't stand him. And yet, when he makes his way down to Egypt, the Egyptians, the anti-Semites, the people who you would think would be the people who would hate the Jew the most, everyone's in love with Yosef. He can do no wrong, whether it's in jail or whether it's in the house of Potiphar. And you see from here that when it comes to chen, when it comes to a person's likability factor, there's no rhyme or reason for these things. People that you think would normally be your best friends sometimes will hate you, and people that you think would normally be your sworn enemy sometimes are your best friends. And so you can't judge just based on the external indicators, especially when it comes to the great fate of the Jewish people, which Hashem is constantly orchestrating through you and through other people, through other Jews. You can never know what relationships are forged or are broken based upon some grander plan. So that's why that's another idea that's related to the idea of making friendships and repairing friendships that we should all keep in mind, is that sometimes your best friend will come from the least expected place, and sometimes the person who you thought was going to be your best friend turns out to be a backstabber. So, kabdeyu v'chashdeyu, always give everyone respect, always watch your back, and try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Have a great day.